Okay. Hi, everyone. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you so much for joining us today on our double feature of Entra with Andre and Rory. So we've got a jam-packed session today. But first of all, I would also like to take a little bit of a look at our housekeeping before we get started so we can have a productive and much as interactive session as possible. So for those of us who are joining online, please raise your hand on Teams for questions, use React. And at the end of each talk, we're going to have about 5 minutes for Q&A for our presenters. If you ask a question, you also get some swag, whether it's a t-shirt in your size or a nice beanie for summer. And for today, we'd also like to thank our sponsor, Arinco, who is our Microsoft's ANZ Partner of the Year in 2023. We actually got Daniel Lund here wandering around, who is the GM for NZ, if you have any questions around what they do. So code of conduct, be kind, be constructive and respectful. This is a community for sharing and trying to be as a welcoming space as possible. So in terms of where are the toilets and where can you get more coffee? So if you need more coffee during the session, there's a coffee station just right out here on the left-hand side if you could go out that door. And there's also one in the green area if you would walk out the door to the right. So if you need first aid, it's just by the reception desk. But the toilets, so if you take the immediate right as you exit reception, that's the ladies' bathroom, and the one next after is the men's. In terms of exit, we just go down the staircase, either side will do. And the evacuation routes, one's in front of Auckland Transport and again out the front of KPMG by the waterfront. And lastly, we'd like to hear more about your war stories. You don't be experienced without failing a few times. So if you would like to be our next community speaker, please register online. I know that Ahmed over here is actually looking at some speaker forms already for the coming months ahead. So anything around Azure, whether it's AI, whether it's security, infrastructure, yeah, please put a step forward. And if you've never spoken before, we're happy to help guide you on how to do a public speaking as well. And lastly, please share your feedback. I mean, we create these sessions for you and we want to make sure that they're as useful for you as possible. And yeah, I'd like to welcome our next speaker. So Andre, come on down.
All good. Testing the mic. Can everyone hear me? Online too? Hopefully.
Yeah,
yeah, coolio. Got it. Yes. Did it show up? Yeah. Coolio. Just a couple seconds till I figure out how to press F5. And then, yep, and then changing the screen, yep. There we go. Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. There we go. So, okay, so for today, I've been asked to present about Entra around security. So this is a topic that I've been involved in some of my customer conversations recently. It's a topic that's very exciting because it's a recent announcement from Microsoft coming from a few months back. So it's a whole new ground for Microsoft's security platform and something that there's been a lot of excitement from customers, but also from the technical aspect as well, right? So when you think of the possibilities of what this can achieve. So this is Microsoft's Security Service Edge. That's what I'll be talking about. And within that, we'll have a couple solutions. But before I do that, I'd just like to understand from you, even from online, has anyone here ever heard of Entra Internet or Private Access? Anyone that's not Microsoft? A couple of people, yeah. Okay. Some online. Awesome. That's good to hear. Good to hear. Good to see. Hopefully, I'll bring in some relevant new information to you. But if you've seen, you pretty much have seen most of what's out there. But anyway, getting to it, I'll just kick off by talking about what Entra means, right? So Entra is a new product family name that Microsoft announced last year, and it currently encompasses all of these different technologies. The common ground, though, is access or identity and access, right? That's the whole point of Entra, or an entry point to your data or to your infrastructure, if you will. So as you can see, Microsoft breaks it down into very different product categories. Today, we're focusing on the network access on the right-hand side. Rory will be touching on a couple different ones later on as well. But some of the exciting parts of this is that a lot of this is also available to our customers currently. Some of them are new and are coming up soon. So just focusing on those two at the right-hand side. And the beauty of this Entra product family is that it's all under the Entra Administration Center, right? So one of the benefits of us having this one product family name is concentrating and reducing the number of dashboards that people have to go through to set all of those things up, essentially. So if you go to entra.microsoft.com, you'll have access to the Administration Center, which is what you can see on screen.
Is it still called Azure Active Directory in that previous screenshot?
That's probably something I need to update. Is it?
No,
I won't go back. I won't go back. Yeah, I think they're rolling out the UI changes. That's a good point, Paul. Yes, it's a challenge. Okay, so why are we talking about private access or Entra access, if you will, internet and private access? There are a raft of challenges, many different challenges that customers have to face whenever they are architecting their current networks, especially given the rise of the hybrid workforce, as we all know and have seen for the past few years. The rise of SaaS services and SaaS applications being utilized by organizations, but also how do you securely get access to your legacy applications that haven't yet been modernized. They are not yet sitting on a cloud somewhere on a public cloud, or they haven't been fully architected yet for modern access. But how do you securely give access from your users to these legacy applications? Be them where they are, likely on-prem, right? So how do you give secure access following modern architecture models such as Zero Trust to these applications? So there are a raft of challenges there, including one that's very common to use, VPN, right? So most of the time, organizations still rely on VPN and still segment access through subnets. And as we know, if you have a network background, you know that giving access to a subnet means that anyone can access whatever is in that subnet. If you have a web server that is not particularly segmented, or if your infrastructure is not particularly well segmented, that can lead to lateral movement from an attacker's perspective, and it can lead to, of course, data breaches, potentially the exploit of vulnerabilities in that particular subnet, and thus things can escalate because of improper segmentation of your network. So then some of these challenges have been really concerning for organizations and for customers, essentially. And then we come to Microsoft's Security Services Edge solution. And the first thing I wanted to start off with is defining SSE, or Security Service Edge. This is the definition by Gartner that I put it in there. Gartner came up with the term, so I think they're the best ones to talk about it. It is a set of cloud-centric security capabilities that facilitate access to websites, software as a service, applications, and private applications, right? So security to all these different channels to your data, essentially. And at the bottom, I highlighted some of the common industry terms and security terms that are generally aligned to access that are also part of SSE, right? So it's a combination of secure web gateway, zero trust network access, cloud access security broker, and firewall as a service as well. So it's a lot of capabilities under this one brand of or industry category of solutions, right? So then how does Microsoft approach it? With a cloud solution, first and foremost, that can essentially achieve internet and private access through anywhere, right? That's the approach. And it can protect identities, endpoints, and remote networks. It utilizes conditional access in Entra ID, and that's at the core of the solution. Because at the top there, you can see that it's calling out that it's identity-centric, right? So the change from Microsoft's SSE to other solutions that you'll find in the market is how we approach the access request. So some of these traditional network vendors, they will rely on network segments, access to network segments. But what our solution proposes and allows you to is to grant access to specific applications or even network segments or even protocols and even specific ports and protocols down to even specific processes running in services. That's a very advanced use case, but that is even possible with our solution. But that's all based on the identity of the requester to that particular resource, right? So that's the whole difference here. So it really relies heavily on your conditional access and, of course, Entra ID in order to scope that access to your data. Of course, we have dedicated tunnels to allow your access from your device, your user devices, all the way to your data sitting in your application, wherever it is. And it does so in a couple of different ways. I'm going to touch on that a little later. But essentially, what it allows customers to achieve by having this approach via identity and also being so granular to the point of applications is that it allows customers to follow the zero trust tenets from essentially the market and what is considered good security architecture, right? So think about the ability to verify explicitly at every single request, the ability to use least privilege, meaning that you are granting only the necessary access to your resources to the relevant people, but also you are also logging and assuming breach since you are keeping track of every single interaction and request that is made in your network. At the end of the day, this enables some business benefits, such as simplifying network access security, since, of course, you're relying on identity-based and applications, and of course, the user experience is streamlined everywhere because you don't have to rely on specific clients to authenticate with a specific set of credentials and so on and so forth. And even from an administration perspective, we can see how we can roll it out. It's a little simpler than some VPN solutions out there. But the whole goal, again, is to allow all these identity-centric controls following zero trust best practices to ideally and hopefully any applications and resources in your organization, right? So be them Microsoft 365 applications and resources, internet and SaaS applications as well. And that is core because supporting the ability to inspect TLS traffic to SaaS applications and the ability to perform specific actions to that traffic is important from that solutions perspective. But also at the very bottom there in green, you can see that we can protect private applications. And it states all private apps. I'm going to get into what that means. So looking from a solution perspective, within the Service Edge solution, Microsoft has Entra Internet Access, which secures access to internet, to all internet, SaaS, and Microsoft 365 apps. And it also has Entra Private Access. So there's a distinction there. They do rely on different deployment methodologies because they are essentially different in how they operate and what they are trying to achieve, but they're all configured through the same portal. and that really helps a lot. And of course, the foundation of all of them are essentially potentially the same, right? So same identities, same Entra ID directory, which is the foundation of your policies there as well. And this breakdown I thought about bringing up because some of these capabilities are already publicly available, as you can see, or are actually in GA. So private web apps is GA. But some capabilities are still in private preview or public preview. So it's worth noting that. Entra Private Access has, in public preview, the ability for all private apps. What that means is currently we support a number of protocols through private web apps. So think of TCP-based protocols. But up in future, in the roadmap, we actually have the ability to also look at UDP-based protocols for private applications. And for Entra Internet Access, public preview for Microsoft 365 apps and for other internet apps in private preview. And this is a bit of why Microsoft is in a unique position to provide these services. What I do like to highlight here is conditional access. Every conversation I have with my customers always go back to conditional access. In some way, shape, or form, they go back to performing role-based access control. Conditional access help us allow access to specific applications and services utilizing one set of conditions and policies that is fed by multiple signals from our architecture, right? This here is, something very unique. Also, our infrastructure, our data center infrastructure globally is unique, and it allows any organization to access their data within milliseconds away, instead of having to wait seconds and that creating further delay into your application pipeline even. And of course, it can work with third party because Microsoft is also trying to approach security as an agnostic service. Cool. Now into a little bit further into the internet access. This is the same image as before, but on the right-hand side, you can see the focus there on the internet or Microsoft applications that are currently supported or that we have a look at, that we can have a look at coming up further. But essentially, the ability there for us to control where your traffic is going to your Microsoft controlled applications, how they're being accessed from your users, and of course, that they're using the fabric of access from Microsoft's infrastructure. So that is very important as well, right? So when you utilize internet access, you can essentially utilize the fabric of the Microsoft infrastructure to allow access to these applications, and then of course, keep track of how your users are accessing everything and guarantee some better experience as well to them. To these other platforms, some of them are coming up, some of them are in private preview, and so on and so forth. Now for private access, this is the one that generates a little more buzz from large organizations, particularly because of legacy and corporate network examples. So on the right-hand side here, you can see we have this diagram representing how these users can connect to these different applications. And you can see that all of them have this logo here. This is what is the connector logo effectively for the solution. Because the way this simplifies is we roll out a connector to a server, currently a Windows server, that sits with line of sight connectivity to your applications. So that's important, right? So think of your internal applications that need to be accessed externally or from anywhere, or by specific users. For you to give access to that application, you just need to have a connector with line of sight to that application, right? So at the bottom here is the best example. So we have a couple connectors. We can create groups of connectors, and I'm going to get into that a little later. We can create groups of connectors that allow us to load balance if there is any issue, but also that allows us to always get access to applications that are locally in your environment. How we do that, we configure essentially a application within our platform. And this is coming from what used to be called, or what is called still, it's a similar technology to what is the Azure Application Proxy, Is anyone familiar with application proxy? Yep. Some folks are, yep. So it's a similar functioning, similar functionality. But the whole point is configuring it all from Entra's dashboard and allowing a specific down to the IP address and port access to specific applications in your environment, right? So this can go down to RDP and SSH. So think about someone having to access a server locally in your infrastructure via RDP. You don't want to expose RDP publicly. So what you need to do is potentially create a connector like that, get your users authenticated with their own credentials to your connector, essentially. That connector has a list of allowed users to that particular application. And you can enforce a second layer of authentication, not only to the application itself within the platform, but also you can create conditional access policies that state that everyone should be prompted for MFA, for example, before they are given access to that particular resource. So you're effectively providing MFA to RDP or to SSH. So think of developers who are accessing Linux boxes, for example. And of course, FTP and even SMB if you have a file share that you need to provide granular connection. So then what this gives us is a better access beyond what VPN can provide. So this is a great example here. Generally, VPNs would typically allow access to all ports on the network, or at least on the subnet. Instead, what this allows us to do is, of course, configure their explicit user and device trust validation with conditional access within Entra ID. And we can then, of course, publish applications within our platform and only allow access to the users who are part of that application, right? So effectively creating a more granular and identity-centric connection to your private application. Before I go further, any questions, or should I just, Amit? Yes, go for it.
What are you talking about? About channels, but is this also talking about influencing the way traffic being forwarded? So what I'm asking is that, for example, let's say someone has got a someone does something on Azure, whatever is it, they would use Azure private point like that. Then in a way force traffic to over as services or whatever. Go through the express route. From what you're talking here, it's all about setting up tunnels, which is like good. But does it also influence the flight traffic?
No, that's a great question. That is what the network industry sees as and calls SASE. It's a different way of approaching security too, but it's what you're asking about is more about availability and optimization of traffic. This is not, it's not part of security service edge. Security service edge, focuses on access and security controls. Great question. Yeah.
I see you mention about looking after the apps, giving you the access.
Yeah.
IDs.
Yeah.
How about for key vault and secrets? Looking after that now as well.
Who can access key vaults and secrets?
Yeah.
That there are some controls within Azure itself that can be applied to that.
I was wondering if Entra was, because
Not yet.
say I'm super
Yes.
admin and I've got some secrets in there. I also have access to it, but
This does not fall under the concept of the network access itself, unless its key vaults are, well, it's stored in Azure anyways. You wouldn't have them sitting on-prem, right? So it doesn't actually fit the use case for Service Edge. But we do have controls in Azure that can be applied to that. Yeah, it's a different methodology to achieve what you're alluding to.
wondering if there's something that you need to be aware of on the key vault side. Do I need to have certain Entra protocols in place, or if I'm using Entra, do I need to?
That'll fall under your Entra ID, for example, and how your users are configured, and also how you. Yeah, that's right. Can I pause you there? I'll just continue a little bit more further, and we'll go back to you. So for us to configure the connector for private access, there are a few requirements. These are some of very simple ones, connectivity requirements here. So the connector itself is a lightweight agent, so it's a piece of code that you deploy to your Windows server, and it creates the connection from that server to our global secure access service. That's what Microsoft calls that service. Here's the operating system requirement, and from an administration perspective, you can organize and deploy multiple connectors, but organize them in groups as well, if you wish to separate how your traffic is dealt with by the connectors. This is the requirements connections. It's very deep down, but the whole point is talking about how to configure them, and it's all available online. And why I'm steering this way is because I tried to prepare a little demo for us to have a look at. So I set up a couple servers. Yeah, a couple servers, literally. So I set up a Windows server with a connector and also a web server running RDP. In fact, it's just another server running RDP. They are running in specific VNet, and I have users which are part of the Hyrule Kingdom. If you're a fan of Zelda, I have Link and Zelda potentially trying to access that RDP server. Right. So how does that kind of work? Let me just bring up my demonstration here. Apologies for it being a little small. Yeah, so it's a little small. I can potentially zoom in. Yeah, I can zoom in a little. So this is my client server or my client device. This is my user. So this is the user who wants to access that particular resource. So what we can see on the right-hand side is that they are on a different subnet segment, 10.1.05. And I was attempting to check my connection there to port 3389, but they are effectively on subnet 1.05. In this particular device, I'm running my global secure access agent. For this particular device, I can even go into the bottom here and check out the devices or the client's information. So there's a client checker, which is the same information you can see at the top there. So the client checker just helped me see if this device has correct connectivity back to the Microsoft services required for this to run properly. And it also has a different interface for you to quickly see if you're connected or not. But this user would potentially try to log into that RDP server. But before I do that, let me just jump into my connector server. This is my connector server running Windows Windows Server 2019. This right here at the top, you can see it's just a different network segment. Yeah, it should be 2.0.4. And it has direct line of sight to my server. So that's yet that server I'm trying to access. And what happens whenever I try to connect from this device to that is essentially the user gets prompted for, it gets connectivity, right? So that's essentially what should happen there, provided the infrastructure hasn't gone down due to my policies, but they should be prompted for the authentication. Yeah, so that's essentially what happens. In the server, ideally, we could also do some troubleshooting with the client if I had the correct interface in there, but that's essentially what we would see, right? Now, from an administration perspective, what I do want to showcase as well is what this looks like from an Entra perspective. So let me just bring up my administration portal. So this is Entra, the entra.microsoft.com portal I mentioned before. You can see Entra has multiple different sections, including Entra ID for identity. There's a raft of protection controls here, a section just for conditional access, for example, and identity protection. These are all good and well. These are extra features, but everything I'm talking about here today is under global secure access. And in here, you can easily see how to get started. The platform really helps you do that. And it's relatively straightforward. All we have to do is enable traffic forwarding from the clients who are going to be connected to this back to the applications. So I just enabled this particular access profile, and then I deployed a connector. Within connectors, I can essentially create different connector groups if so I need, but also I can click on download connector service. This link here can be copied into any of your servers anywhere. That'll give you direct access to that particular executable for the global secure access agent to run on that server. And then after a couple minutes, it'll show up in here. As you can see, I have a couple servers here and devices connected to my application proxy. From here onwards, we need to set up the access to these protocols in your network. So there are a few ways to do that. The platform has what it calls quick access. So within quick access, we can essentially state what IP address and port should be exposed from the server, right? So the server that has a direct line of sight to that device that does not have internet visibility or internet connectivity, how they should pivot to that. That's essentially what I've done here. If I wanted to change to different profiles, I could do that this way. And from here, what we can do is go back to or get into the applications, in the application details. So this here is the application. So this is a very familiar page if you work with enterprise applications within Azure, right? So it's the same underlying technology there, just everything from one single pane of glass here for your access in identity management team. From here, I could give a specific access to users. I've only given access to this particular user to this application, which is link. And then I ensure that the network access properties are ticked off for private access. And if I wanted to, I could even enforce conditional access, right? So I could even come in here, and that's the very familiar conditional access policies that you must have seen or bumped into the past as well. This is how it's set up in the portal, essentially, deployed into your servers, and the user experience is essentially transparent because the user doesn't have to do anything to start utilizing it. Just try to access their applications, and then whatever policies you have, be them conditional access or application-based, regular application-based, they'll be seeing what they can do. Yeah, I'm just at time. I had your question on the backlog.
Questions change now because
good.
so compared to just-in-time network access, this is obviously more comprehensive and requires an agent.
Yeah.
Is there any time you would prefer just-in-time access over secure services?
They are different, but just-in-time is great for cloud-based resources. So that's the answer, right? If you have private applications that you cannot control and apply those controls, then you need something else, such as private access, for example, right? Go. And I'm leaving you guys here with some resources or just further information, but no one in here can click. So yeah, I'll share some of them later.
Questions online.
Yes. How do we do
I'll
that?
have to go over there. I was handing out swag.
Intro, like a role, Microsoft.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Skip that. I'm a security technical specialist at Microsoft. So I work with the security team, cybersecurity team in enterprise accounts and public sector accounts. And I cover almost everything in our security portfolio. So think Microsoft Defender, everything Defender. Think of Sentinel. Think of Entra, but also Purview, right? Purview.
Riva.
Priva, almost there. Maybe next year they'll give it to me. But these are the technologies. I'm a technical specialist, and I try to keep technical, right? So yeah, that's my role. But I also try to keep active in the community and doing something else on the sides. That's me.
All right. A couple of questions online from
Yes.
Tim. Do on-premise connectors support Linux?
Not yet. Currently, only remember this is all in pub. Yeah, some of them are GA, but some of them are still in public preview, but still not there.
Since Windows 2012 R2 end of life without extended support, maybe it should not be mentioned.
Yeah, maybe. I don't have the answer to that, but yeah.
How does the private access differ from something like Zscaler, or are they the same?
So not too familiar with Zscaler, but again, our whole approach is identity-centric. So given our intrinsic, is that the right word? Our very deep connectivity with Entra ID and our ability to perform conditional access policies, that's how we differentiate from some of these other network-based access, right? Yeah.
You need to store like agent in there, like.
Yes.
It's both on the server and also on your machine or not?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. So they have to have a connectivity somehow. The connectors, yeah, the best way to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Company.
sorry.
Understanding you have your ID within Azure,
Yes.
but if I were to do some work on another company.
Yeah. You'd likely have to have a guest access to that tenant, right? Yeah. So that's common way that I've seen is working. Yeah. Cool.
Andre, if I've got a cloud app accessing a on-prem app.
Yeah.
How do I set up the
A cloud app.
entity for that through the file?
That's a great question. A cloud app, such as your own publicized on a PaaS service.
Yeah, connecting to a database or something that's on-prem.
So that
Do I do an identity around that application, a managed identity?
I think it seems to me like this is a little more complex architecture. It could go back to the entry point of the user to your application, I believe. The underlying backend access would have to be taken care of by something else potentially. And at that point, we're thinking about purview. Yeah, we're thinking about something on how we're controlling access to that data, not just to the network itself or the application. Yeah, good question though. Yeah.
A bit like Partner Center and the GDAP mess.
Was it?
The admin agent.
Yeah.
Running access and through security groups, tested security groups.
Yeah, up to you guys.
I'm going to ask part of what I was going to ask about the apps to app, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to get a bit of clarity that proxy is the connector.
Yeah,
right?
that's
So-
right.
And that your app, how this might be outside of this thing. How's the app working with that? See, is it wrapped around? Or is it just the app's just pointing its traffic through the proxy? So if it, I'm trying to get my head around how you're actually setting up app that's sitting on premise.
Yep.
It's the proxy only. You have to actually.
You don't have to set up the backend service at all. You just set up line of sight to that particular device, right?
He just picks up what if it's asking for an address, the proxy says that's the one I manage.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's right. That's right.
This one is, does Azure offer the same type of security?
Yeah, so that's why I introduced the conversation about private access, talking about Azure application proxy. It is essentially similar, or if not the very same one at the moment. How private access extends that is going to UDP ports, for example, right? So going beyond just the regular application ports that you can find on app proxy. Yeah.
question from Blake. Is the implementation of private SSE some identity wrapping express route?
Yeah, didn't quite get that. So the implementation requires express route? Not necessarily, no. Yeah. Cool.
Sorry, one last question.
Yeah.
Since it's already on Entra, is it just for the user accounts or is it going to be for identities, service principles that we can do some kind of a thing? If I have a third-party solution that's going to use a service principle, I have that traffic redirected through. Is it something on the pipeline or?
On the roadmap, perhaps?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd have to check that. Yeah.
And when it comes to the endpoints, what are the minimum compliance requirement? Do the devices need to be Azure AD registered by minimum?
Do the devices need?
External access, yeah.
So when you install the agent, you have to authenticate with a user account and password.
Then the devices become registered or hybrid joined.
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily.
Account level, because it's going to be an account level rather than on the device level by itself.
Yeah, pretty much. You can apply device level on conditional access policies, but not necessarily. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Oh yeah, the lapel.
So everyone just handing over to Rory now. Just get him set up for a minute.
Yeah, so you can still go through that properly. My first was there as well.
Just like that. Just wait for everyone to get in order.
I'm gonna access.
Like 6 slides.
I'm going to
Now that's a presentation.
It's a couple of questions. Your vision perspective. Are you going to be having any logging in the second they already have in place.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So my name's Rory. I'm an identity architect and I'm a consultant. I kind of work part-time as a sole trader and I work companies in New Zealand and all over the world. I'm a Microsoft MVP. Currently in the security area. Security is not really identity, but that's where the MVP stuff is set up. And if you want to read about the stuff that we're going to be talking about, I blog on Author3, Rory Braybrook, which is a blog aggregator. So we're going to be talking about CIAM and we're going to be talking about verified ID. So Andre basically showed you the stuff where you've got Microsoft Entra ID protection, governance, permission management, and down the bottom, this is what Andre was talking to you about. So I'm going to be talking to you about Entra ID over here and verified ID over here, right? So this is the Entra portal. As Andre said, it's now called Entra and not Azure AD. So if we go to Entra, and you can see here we've got managed tenants, and we want to create a tenant. What you'll see here now, right, is we have two different kinds of tenants in Entra ID. So we have the workplace tenant, which is the old Azure AD one, which is the corporate one for the employees of companies. And on the right, and it's currently in public preview, we have the CIAM tenant or the customer IAM tenant. And that is for customers, like the customers of the warehouse or whatever. And it is now part of Azure AD as opposed to B2C being out on their own. So the customer is what is the successor to B2C. Right? So B2C used to sit out here. It wasn't part of Azure. Now the new B2C CIAM or Entra External ID sits inside. So External ID has two parts in Entra. It has B2B, which is the ones that we had before, the guest accounts. That hasn't changed at all, but we've added the B2C customers into external IDs. Okay, so you can see here we've got users, we've got groups. So the advantage of doing this way, suddenly B2C or CIAM has inherited all the features of Azure, because before they do something and they'd have to port it to B2C, then they do something else and they have to port it to B2C. Now it's all talked together. So that's like a huge advantage. So external identities, which is, if you know the B2C stuff, so you look at identity providers, you see Google, Facebook, Apple, SAML, WSFed, all the kind of stuff you know. User flows, so you can set up your custom attributes. Custom authentication extensions, that is new. That is something I'll talk about a little bit later. That is something that was never in B2C, but basically you can trigger API calls from events. And then the bottom stuff down here is basically your B2B stuff. So again, you can kind of do all the kind of stuff that's in B2C that sits up here now. So over here, you can say, get started. You can run an app in 5 minutes. So you can start the guide. It will ask you if it just take a while. Right, so you basically say, do you want email and password or email and one-time passcode? You can set up your logos and things. You can decide how you want it centered or not. So you can try it out, and then you can add a sign-in. So there's a whole lot of GitHub packages that you can bring in and quickly hook it all up, and I'll show you that a little bit later. So what I will show you now is Woodgrove Groceries. So Woodgrove Groceries, which is woodgrovedemo.com, is built entirely on CIAM. Okay, and if we look over here about the demo, you'll see you can do sign up or sign in with email address and password. You can do self-service password reset. You can sign in with your social accounts. You can collect user attributes, and you can do custom claim provider stuff. So pretty much all the same stuff that you could do in B2C is now being brought over to CIAM with a whole lot of new additions. So I'm not going to go and create users and sign in and that, because you've seen that like a million times before. And you've seen it. So if I click sign in, so down here, no account, create one. That is basically the sign up, which is the same as for B2B customers. And if you look down here, sign in options, you'll see you can sign in with Windows Hello or security key, which you cannot do with B2C. So again, that's why they've brought this whole thing over, because suddenly they can get all the stuff that is sitting in Azure right now, and they don't have to port it all over. And you kind of wonder why they didn't do that in the beginning. No one knows, but they've kind of seen the light, if you like, and they bring it over. And that's the way that you're going to go forward. So yeah, it's pretty cool. You get all the things like conditional access and ID protection and all those good things. Cool. So if I go back to the slides, just hang on. All right, and I just go. Right. All right, so that's okay. So the first point is that CIAM is integrated with Entra ID, Azure ID, like I explained. And because it is part of the same thing, groups and roles are now first-class citizens. So if you've ever used B2C, if you wanted to get groups and roles, you had to use Graph API to go and call Azure AD to get the groups and roles. Now they're part of the system, and you can configure them, and you can add them to your token. There is an Entra portal, which I showed you very quickly. And there is also an Entra wallet ID, which we'll go into a little bit later. All right, now this one here shows you what happens when you do the quick start. So if you wanted to do an SPA app, you can then choose, do I want to be Angular, JavaScript, or React? And then you download something in that language, you'll get up very quickly and you can be up and running. Or you can select a web app and you can do Node or ASP.NET Core. So you can basically, within 5 minutes, hook up a very simple sample app to CIAM. Okay, and we've looked at the sample CIAM app. So the questions that I've been asked about a million times. Okay. what happens going forward to Azure AD B2C. So Microsoft have committed to keeping B2C running. It will still be supported. It'll still get security updates. You can still put in calls to the help desk. Basically, it will continue exactly as it is. So no change at all. You can go ahead and start a new project with absolute confidence. It's going to be around for a while. As you saw when I showed you that little CIAM demo, it is only the B2C equivalent of user flows. There are no custom policies. If you've ever looked at B2C, you'll know the custom policies are quite complicated and they're written in XML, right? There is no current custom policy equivalent in CIAM. Right? That definitely is something that will be coming, but it's not there right now. I've heard various stories about custom policies. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you that it will not be using XML. So all that complexity will all be going away. Dan will say, yeah, and a lot of other people will say, yeah. So I've heard two stories. Again, these are just what I hear. I don't know. But the one story is we'll have all these APIs that we use for the customer, and I'll go and show you them now. So you've got all these APIs at the back, and there'll be some kind of no-code, low-code, drag and drop front end that calls the APIs. The other story is you've got all these APIs, and you write your own front end. So you're completely open to do anything that you want. Okay, now I want to show you one more thing that I forgot to show you. So I'll just show you here. Same one. All right, if I just go back. Right, so down the bottom, we've got these authentication APIs. And this is all on. So you can see here, there's a token issue and start event, right? So this is triggered when the token is about to be issued. What you can do here with your REST API is you can go and interrogate a SQL database. You can get extra claims from the database, and you can put them into your token. So you see there's loyalty number, loyalty since, loyalty tier. That's the only one that is implemented at the moment, but you can see they're planning to do on attribute collection start, fired at the beginning of the process. And so you can do a whole lot of rules about signing up, checking your domain, modifying stuff. There's one on attribute collection submit, which you can use to validate stuff. So you can ask them, do you have an employee ID? You can validate the employee ID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the kind of way going forward. They're going to have all these events that happen during the whole customer user flow. And you can hook in, when that kind of event's triggered, you can call a REST API and go and do whatever you want, right? So it's much more flexible in some ways than the old B2C just calling a REST API halfway through a custom policy. Okay, so before we get on to verified IDs, does anyone have any questions about CIAM?
How many customer tenants can you have the new Entra?
That's a good question. I've only tried one, but you could probably have more. But I think in preview, you can only have one.
Is it currently for B2C per subscription, you can have 20?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. And that's because it's all still in preview. At the moment, I think you can just do one. Yeah, but any other questions on CIAM? Cool. Has anyone here ever seen verified IDs or verified credentials or self-sovereign identity? Two people. Sweet.
I'm going to set it up.
Okay, so let's get on to verified IDs, which I think is much more interesting. So, verified ID, self-sovereign identity, distributed identity, decentralized identity, verified ID, verifiable credentials. There's a million names for this stuff, right? Basically, it's all about owning your own identity. So say at the moment, you've got to sign up with an e-commerce site, right? Like you have to give them a whole lot of claims, you give them their logo and your password, and it sits in a database with 20 million people, right? You have no control over that. They can go and sell that data. They can do what the hell they like. And it gets hacked because the security shit, right? And so there's 20 million of your things sitting on the dark web, and Troy Hunt basically built his life and his business around this, right? And if you haven't done so, Troy Hunt has a website called Have I Been Pwned? Yeah. I strongly recommend you go and sign up for it, because if your email address is in any of these breaches, he will send you an email, and you should immediately forget about everything else in your life and go and change your password. Well, presume, hopefully you're not using the password, but anyway. So yeah, that's the problem, right? The idea of verified ID is that in the Microsoft world, it sits on your phone. It sits in the authentication. So you own your identity, and if they're going to hack something, they can only hack you. They can't go and hack the other 19 million people, so it doesn't scale, okay? It's all based on standards. Microsoft have built their own system based on the standards, and they use the Authenticator app. Other people have gone in slightly different ways, but it is all standards based. So if you just hang on. Okay, and I just want to go here. Oh, so there is my, and down here you see verified IDs. All right, so these are verified IDs, and we'll go into them in a little bit of detail. So there's a very nice demo that we can run here. And this is Woodgrove, and Woodgrove is an employee onboarding. This is how they onboard employees in the Woodgrove world. So Matthew Michael, he wants to join Woodgrove. And so the first thing they do is they use a company called True Identity. True Identity is not part of Woodgrove. True Identity is a company. I'm sure you've all seen this kind of thing when you sign up to a financial site in New Zealand. You upload your driver's license because it's got a photo. You take a selfie of yourself, and it compares the two and says, sweet, we now know that you're Matthew Michael, and you've got an identity. So we go and verify with True Identity. Okay, so we take the selfie, sweet. We upload our driver's license, that was all good. We go and verify it. Fantastic, verification, okay. Now we get a QR code. So what we do is we scan the QR code. And it gives us, hopefully, and you see the PIN. You don't have to have the PIN, that's optional. All right, and we have a verified ID. So this verified ID is sitting on this phone, nowhere else. And it says that this is verified ID, New Zealand driver's license, Matthew Michael. There's a whole lot of claims here, right? There is a thing called selective disclosure, where when you, and I'll show you the presentation now, but when you present it, there's actually a little tick box next to each claim, and you can tick the claims that you want to send. So it's not like before where you give everybody the whole information and do what the hell they like. Now you can say, for you, I'm going to give you my age, which is over than 21, because I want to buy a beer. Right? You just need that's all you need to know, right? You don't need to know what my name is. You don't need to know who I work for. You just need to know that I'm old enough to buy a beer. So you can, it has that, it's got that granular approach. Like I say, you own your identity. You decide what you do with it. Not some dude sitting with Facebook or somewhere that's selling it or whatever the hell they do. Okay, so we've now got a verified identity. Okay, so we go back to Woodgrove. And we now exit the portal. And we now this is now where we're going to onboard the portal. So let's go back over here. You know the drill now. Scan it. Right, and it says, I've got a few, which card do you want to use? I want to use that card. I want to share that. All right, and we now have verification completed. And we now have a Woodgrove card. So now we continue the onboarding. We want to retrieve this. You don't always have to do it this way. Again, let me bring that up. We scan it. 5412. Next. Add. And we now have a Woodgrove verified employee card, right? So this card proves that you work for Woodgrove, okay? And it says the Woodgrove, you work in customer relations, that's your employee ID, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so now you've onboarded, you can prove your work. Next time you go to the gate, you can use this to scan the gate and it'll let you in or whatever. And now you want to go and buy some kit because if you work for Woodgrove, you get a discount. So we access the discounts. Give me my card. So let me just pop that up again. We scan it. It says, which one do you want to share? Because I've got a few. That one, share it. Cool. Return to laptops. And lo and behold, you get a discount.
All this that you're getting in the secure ID, the
The Authenticator app.
indicator
Yeah.
is just stored on there. So like that, that came from your workplace is
Yeah.
storing all that information on there.
So the details of the verified credential
Yeah.
are stored here. Yes.
This is a little bit like something like Solid, but more distributed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically it's here. I'll show you. I've got a screen, a slide that I'll show you. So that's the nice demo.
You see something like the government's Realme turning into like the true identity provider?
They are looking at it right now. They are okay, but this is based on OpenID. So I'm not going to go into the whole tech stack, but so Realme, DIA are looking at VCs right now. And you think about the travel agencies, you think about IATA, they think about putting passports on VCs. Okay. So now imagine you don't have to have your passport. Oh my God, where did I leave it? It's all here, mate. It's all here.
So just one quick question. First of all, this is next level presentation. I was like, you showing.
Oh, we haven't finished it though. There's more to come. No, go on. What's your question?
So the burning question is like, what happened if I lost the phone?
You lost the phone, right? So I have, as part of the thing inside Authenticator app, it has backed up my verified IDs to the cloud somewhere. And then when I get a new phone, I set up Authenticator app, I validate, and it downloads the whole thing. Okay. There's actually a whole lot of standards they're working on for buying a new phone, losing a phone, etc. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
With the seed document that you use, the driver's license.
Yeah.
Someone picks up my driver's license. They create around that seed document.
If they pick up your driver's license and take a selfie.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
but
okay.
it won't be the
It's
same
selfie,
photo.
won't it?
No, but remember the driver's license is just a part of, it's not actually part of verified ID. So you can kind of think that verified ID, Microsoft Entra, maybe they're going to do Windows Hello for Business as part of this thing. Now you can do, when you go, I can pick up someone's phone and maybe hack in and use their VC passport. You've got to authenticate 6 times before you get there, but let's just say it. But now when you come up to the thing, if they saying, okay, well, is this really you? It's like, well, no, it isn't, because when you take the selfie, this is not what the phone's got. So it's got that extra step of security. Okay.
Is on that, with the using whatever ID you're using to verify yourself.
Yeah.
Is that not able to back end that to verify that that particular ID that you're using is real?
How do you mean?
Well, if I upload my wife's,
Yeah.
right, and I just, when it gets to attack the Sophie, that it says David Horrocks, but it's Ruth.
But whose selfie are you taking? Your selfie. It won't match the driver's license.
But if I put my face on the driver's license.
Oh yeah, if you forge the driver's license, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, in the back end though, is there any way of verifying the IDs that you?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, possibly.
You'd have to trust the government.
You got what along the line has got to be trust, right? Yeah. Okay, so here is basically how it works. So there are 3 actors. Okay, sorry. There's 3 actors. There's the issuer, there's the user, and there's the presenter. All right, so we've got Woodgrove. Alice is the Michael in the demo, and we've got Prosware where you went and got your PC. So we have a DID is a distributed ID. So this is an ID. It's basically a huge GUID that is part of verified ID. So Woodgrove has their own DID, which is example.woodgrove. The public key for that DID is stored in the trust system. The trust system for Entra is Bitcoin's blockchain. Okay. So please, when I say blockchain is not crypto, no crypto, it is the blockchain. So the public key is stored in the blockchain. The private key is stored in Key Vault. Okay.
Bitcoin, or they're using a
No, they're using Bitcoin's blockchain.
using the second level part.
No, they're not. No, the second level is called SideTree. It's on GitHub, right? And so SideTree is this second level, not Bitcoin. So, and Alice's did, right? The public key is stored in the blockchain. The private key is stored on her phone. Okay. So when you go through this and you go to Prosware, we have an issuer's digital signature and a subject's digital signature. They can go to the blockchain. They can get both of them, and they can verify your ID. Okay, so this using the blockchain, that is the way Microsoft is doing it. That's not part of the standard. Microsoft just says there is, there's the trust system standard. Above that is the standard, which is SideTree, and Entra calls SideTree ION. So if you see any references to ION, it's SideTree, and you can go and look on GitHub. There's a huge repository. If you want to write it on your PC, go for it. Okay. So there are exactly two APIs in this flow. There's an issuer API and there's a presenter API. So what happens is the app was an API, which has got a whole lot of information. It goes to Entra, it goes to verified ID. As part of the response, it returns the QR code. The app then puts the QR code up, however it wants. Okay, that's up to the app. You then scan the QR code. So what's not on this diagram is the phone. So you scan the phone. There's enough information in the QR code to tell the Authenticator app who's using it and who to go to. So the Authenticator app goes back to Entra. You then scan the QR code with the phone. And as part of the request, you specify a callback address. When you scan it, Entra calls back to the app and says, hey, the guy started to scan it. When he's finished the process, it tells the app he's done it. So now you know, yes, it was a valid VC and you can go and do whatever you want, or it returns an error code and then you put up an error code, and that's the way it works. Okay. So that's it. That are the only two APIs. So let's imagine we had a Rinko who very kindly sponsored the pizza. Let's imagine that we want more people to come to the user group. So what we decide to do is people that come 3 times, okay, and this is just, I'm just making this up. We haven't actually, we're not actually doing it. They don't get excited, but we're not doing it yet. So you say, I've been to 3 user groups this year. And so we've got a little form, you fill out the form. We send you an email. And on the email, of course, there is a QR code, just like you'd imagine. So I'm going to do this in Postman because I'm not going to write a whole website to do this. So we are going to issue you a, let me just go over here. I probably need to get a new token, get a new access token, seed, use token. Okay, I'm going to send it because that token is now expired. Cool. So I go over here, I pop that up. Right now I've lost context, so no, I haven't. Excellent, just come here, sorry. Right, and let me just move this a little bit. It doesn't interfere. All right, so I'm going to now scan this QR code. And it says add a verified ID, and I click add. So I now have a verified ID that basically says you're an Azure User Group Plus member. So you get the pastries. It's issued by the Azure User Group, and I put a little logo there of the muffin, just to remind you this gives you pastries. Okay, so now, and so you can basically customize this to a limited extension. It doesn't have to be that bright orange color. All right, so now you come to the meeting and all the pastries are lined up over there. And before you get the pastry, you have to prove that you're a Plus member. So you go to the presentation, which is the other API. You send. And this nice little feature in Postman called Visualize that visualizes the QR code. Really nice. And then you scan it like you've seen it a million times. Sorry, this is the problem. Sometimes it doesn't scan. And I've never figured out why. Why is it doing this to me? I don't know why it does this sometimes. Did all the others. Don't do this. Come on. There we go. All right, and you say, I want to share that. All right, so it's Joe Blogs, and I share it, and you'll see it says here, verifying complete, you can now return, right? So that's because it's using Postman. So now you get your pastry. Right, so that is basically how it works. So the first time I saw this, right, my first, one more thing. The first time I saw it, my first question was not all the stuff that you saw here about onboarding, was can you authenticate with this thing? Because to me, that's like the holy grail, right? Because that's what I do. So if you just bear with me, here. All right, so this is B2C, right? B2C. So let's just go here. And let's run. Oh, there we go, that one. So this is custom policies, if you've ever played around with custom policies. So I just want to send back the token. So I run now. And let's hope this works. And yes, there you are. It came up with a VC. Scan it. So let's go and do that again. Open the front screen. Right. Come here, scan it. Let me just get rid of this. Let's hope it scans because it's so tiny. Oh, magic. All right, and this is just another VC I've got. So you can see it's got that. I share it. It's now saying Joe Blogs is validated successfully, and it's now going to do some MFA for me because I've added MFA. So this is just standard B2C stuff. This is not verified ID. Okay, so hopefully I'll get it. Yeah, 614947. 7. And I verify the code. And it sends me the token. So there you are. So you can see it's got a whole lot of VC stuff, and it's got Joe Blogs and everything that was on your VC. So the next question I had, and I'm not going to show the demo, is yes, you can use this for MFA as well. So you can do a login with the username, password, or whatever, and then you can use a VC to be your MFA. So what is Microsoft doing with it? So if you know LinkedIn is tied in with this, so to prove that you actually work for a company, because you can go to LinkedIn and say you work for Microsoft, right? There's no check. But if Microsoft, they've teamed up with LinkedIn. So if you say you work for Microsoft, you have to show them your Microsoft ID. I think yesterday announced in Microsoft Learn, there's another one called Microsoft Topics or something. So it's a much smaller piece than the actual certs. It's like a little use case thing. When you finish that, they give you a VC. So you can use that to prove to the employer that you're a guru on whatever that thing is. So lots of people are using them all over the place. And that's it. Thank you. Are there any questions about VCs?
Talk about VCs, but it's the migration paths from B2C to.
Yes. I missed that slide. Sorry, I got carried away. Yeah, so custom points, migration. So there's two kinds of migration, right? There's the migration of the users from the old tenant to the new tenant. And I think that's going to be pretty simple because that's going to use Graph API, and they'll probably have some nice tools and things that do that for you. I don't think that's the problem. The problem is when you try and migrate the custom policies, because at the moment there isn't an equivalent. And when there is an equivalent, it's not going to be using XML, and it's going to be really difficult. I think it'll be able to do some of the stuff, but not everything. So it'll do some of the migration, the rest you're going to have to do manually. But it's hard to tell because they haven't announced what they're doing with custom policies. And when should you use CIAM? You should basically use CIAM if you want to start off, in the new world, and that's the way forward. So yeah, any other questions?
The CIAM thing, are there going to be additional directory roles for managing CIAM-based users?
I'm guessing so, yeah. Because roles in that weren't really part of B2C, so I think they would be far more granular now. Yeah. But it's in public preview, so things change. Cool.
Verified ID is being dependent on the authenticator app.
In Microsoft.
Microsoft, yeah. The constant challenges between shifting from iOS to Android, right? Where this backup goes to iCloud, whereas this backup goes to Google. Should we do again everything on the Android setup and delete the verified IDs on iOS?
Well, you can use either. There's Microsoft Authenticator sits on iOS as well.
Backup just.
I imagine the backup is I think the backup's to one cloud. I don't think they have two different clouds. I don't know. I don't use iOS, so I'm not advised. There is one other thing I can mention. In the Microsoft Verified ID, you don't have to use the Authenticator app. There's a SDK called the Wallet SDK that allows you to put the Authenticator app functionality into your mobile application. So your mobile application in Android and iOS can use the Wallet SDK, and the Authenticator functionality, those APIs and everything I showed you, is built in to the SDK. So that's your other option, but that's only for mobile. Nothing online?
Yep, just one. One from Luke, actually.
Luke.
No, worries, not fast. What resources do you recommend to keep up to date with the changes in this space?
So yeah, Microsoft Learn. So those are the ones that I use. But yeah, it's changing all the time.
Your blog.
And my blog.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I think I get about 6,000 hits a week on my blog. So yeah, it's kind of mostly B2C, but it's becoming CIAM and verified.
And pricing.
No, because it's all custom. It's all public preview. The B2B stuff stays the same, but the CIAM stuff they haven't announced. Hopefully it will still be first 50,000 free or something, because it's going to kill it if you have to pay a lot of money.
Cost through, using the blockchain stuff, but there's no.
The blockchain stuff is for, yeah. So the verified ID, I think it's just part of the service. I haven't seen any specific pricing for it. Yeah, that is a very good. I wish it had been. It would have saved everybody so much. I think the reason is that in the beginning, so you've got companies like Real Madrid, right, which is kind of the poster chart for B2C. They have 400 million B2C customers, all their football fans all over the world. And I don't think Azure AD at that point allowed you to have 400 million users in Azure AD. So I think that was the goal at that point. Azure AD's moved on. They've figured out a way to do it now, so now they can move it over.
The ICD.
Yeah, so that sort of works in B2C. Again, it's not, there's nothing been announced about it yet. We'll have to wait and see. I don't even know when it's coming out of public preview. And Microsoft are very good on saying these dates. Dates, yeah. Sometime next year, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
A few questions on verified ID. Is an Entra verified
Yeah, so now that is one of the problems. So although it is standards based, right? If you go back to OpenID Connect, you will see that Microsoft have an MCell library, which is for OpenID Connect. And then if you look at something like Identity Server, they've got an OpenID Connect library, and they're not exactly the same, right? So if you try and connect to Identity Server with MCell, you're going to have a few problems, and vice versa. So they should be the same, but there are some differences. I think the main problem that I've seen is that in the Microsoft verified ID world, we have all these different companies with their own DIDs. You can only find the DIDs. There's a search functionality in verified ID, so you can search, because you can restrict the card to only come from certain companies. So when you bought that PC, you, in the configuration, you can say you're only going to accept Woodgrove's VCs. And so to do that, you need Woodgrove's DID. And so you can go and search for Woodgrove's DID, but you can only search for the DIDs that are inside of Entra. All right. There's no, because the way that they've done this is different. So if you went to this provider, you can't search for that provider's DIDs at the moment. So they need to find a way of somehow getting them all together. At the moment, it's all these little worlds on their own at the moment. So hopefully they find a way forward for that, because that is going to be crucial. Yep. So the verified credential can be revoked from the portal. You can go to the portal and revoke it, but it does not remove it from your phone, because they have no control over your phone. I mean, if you suddenly found stuff missing from your phone, you might be just a little bit upset. But if you try and use that credential again, it'll come up with an error message and say this credential has been revoked. So you can't use it, but they can't remove it from your phone, but it can be revoked, yes.
Why does Entra VC use the Bitcoin?
That was the decision that Microsoft made. They needed that level 1 support, and they probably had a whole lot of familiarity with it. And it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to go and build your own blockchain. So that, you know, it's probably the biggest widely used blockchain. It's pretty standard, pretty secure. But yeah, there's a number of different implementations that use different level 1. There's a company in New Zealand called Matter that actually have built their own VC system. And that's, although it looks exactly like this, it's different. You know, the way that they've done it in terms of the layers and things. I'm not actually sure what they use for their level 1.
Why not, right? It's not, for me, it's not why use it, it's why not use the massive public ledger, right? As it's, if you pick something owned by somebody, feels inherently less trustworthy. Completely public, open to.
Yeah, and it can be verified, and yeah. So it makes sense from that point of view.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's mine.
One last slide of death before we sign out. Fantastic. All right. So if you enjoyed this session, please provide us feedback. It's how we learn and create more content. And if you would like to be our next speaker, obviously we don't expect everyone to have as fabulous demos as Rory has just presented us with today. He's set the standard. I'm not sure how I'm going to reach it. Please scan it. I'm happy to coach as well if you've never done public speaking before. But thank you for today. Please help yourself to what's remaining of the food and the drink, and feel free to network with us and the speakers over the next 20 minutes. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you to online.